Hi, my name is Usman. I'm a photographer at Sonder Creative, and last year around February, March time, I uploaded a couple of videos where I compared the Hasselblad H6D 100C against some full frame cameras and an iPhone. Now, initially, Hasselblad were relatively fine with it. They had a few issues regarding some of the points that I raised, but they were actually okay with it. In fact, they were so fine with it, they sent me some more equipment to test and review. Second video went up, same again, relatively fine, some issues regarding some of the points, but they were okay with it. Until my video went up on some more prominent photography websites and their head office in Sweden caught wind of it. That's when things took a turn for the worse. That's when things got really nasty and they became quite aggressive, and they were saying a lot of personal stuff against me. Instead of actually discussing the video and the points, they were now being very personal against me, calling me stupid and foolish and saying that I'm going to ruin my reputation and my career. This is going to damage my career. And I don't think that they meant that as a threat, but because I don't think the Hasselblad is actively trying to damage my career. Well, I hope not anyway, but at the time those thoughts did creep up, and this kind of continued for a while, and I had some of their representatives say basically similar stuff, so it just felt like they were all coordinating in some sense. But anyway, this eventually subsided, and things kind of settled, and until I was at the photography show this year. So I went to the photography show, and I had my press pass, and I was all excited about it because I was going to go speak to all the companies and just enjoying the vibe, until I was walking past the Hasselblad stand and just saw some of the people that I recognized. So I just waved and said hi, and we had a brief conversation, and the snidey comments started coming out, and those backhanded insults, they started coming out as well, and they were making a few personal comments, and I just kind of took it on the chin. I was like, you know what? They're probably still angry with me. Fine, just let them get it out of their system. And they said a bunch of things, but then eventually, things got okay, and they turned around and said to me, do you know what? Let's just call it water under the bridge. Let's just let it go. So I thought, this is brilliant. We're making progress. I wasn't expecting us to become best friends or anything, but I thought this was progress. We could move on. And they said, look, we've got a few people that we'd like you to meet. They're not here right now, but, are you coming back on any of the other days? So I said, yes, coming back on Monday. So brilliant. Why don't you come and we'll introduce you. So I was like, okay, brilliant. So went back on Monday, did my rounds, spoke to, a bunch of people, got to know a bunch of new companies. And then towards the end of the day, I was walking past the Hasselblad stand and I remembered. So I went up to the same people and said, hey, how you doing? Hope you had a good day. And their reaction was very, very dismissive. It was quite strange because they told me to come, but now they were all very dismissive. We don't know you, don't talk to us. Go away, leave us alone. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So I was just I was making my way out, I was leaving the place, and just before I could leave their stand, I got ambushed by this individual, one of their representatives, and this person comes this close to my face, really close, and I was like, what are you doing? You don't come that close in such an aggressive tone unless you're trying to intimidate someone. So this person was clearly trying to intimidate me, and they were saying so many horrible things to me. They were just saying a lot of personal comments against me, not necessarily swearing, but they were saying a lot of personal things against me, once again, stupid, you're foolish, and this is going to ruin your career. And in that moment it kind of struck me, everyone's saying the same thing. From Hasselblad, all of them are saying the same thing. They've got all one message, and it sounds like a coordinated attack in some sense, because the thing that hit me in that moment was that they're the ones that called me over. They told me to come. So they basically told me to come meet these people so that they could just sit there and berate me and call me stuff and say mean things to me and basically just give me a hard time. That's basically why they called me over. And I'm going to say that's akin to bullying. That is, in my mind, that's bullying basically. And I really didn't appreciate that. So I did defend myself a little bit at that point. One of the points that they made was that, oh, your video had so many errors in it. So I was like, okay, name some. They're like, oh, there were too many. Name one. And they couldn't. They just couldn't name a single error, and they just tried deflecting and going off to another. And I tried to stick to that, but they just wouldn't name a single, say, potential error. And the reason for that is because my comparison, when I compared the full frame system to Hasselblad, and I demonstrated how cheaply built the camera is, and how their lenses actually perform, and how the lenses are really, really bad. They're some of the worst lenses I've used. You don't understand how bad these lenses are. Honestly, it's one of the worst cameras I've used. So many bugs, so many glitches, so many errors, and they obviously didn't like that. And at the time, they were telling me that, oh, we're going to come out and we're going to do our own response. We're going to do our own comparisons. We're going to show you. And Carl Taylor, by the way, has been nothing but a gentleman. He's done nothing wrong. I'm actually a fan of Carl Taylor. But, we had a very brief conversation, polite conversation online on YouTube via the comments. And he was saying, we're going to publish some of our results as well. And I was like, okay, brilliant. Took it as a bit of a compliment, because prior to this, Hasselblad has never done any comparisons between their system and full frame until my video comes out. But yeah, so bit of a compliment there. But yeah, so this person was saying that tons of errors, and the reason why they couldn't name a single error in my video is because I did my comparison very well. It was in a studio environment, flash lighting, with still life, tripod, tethered shooting, and I made sure all of the variables were accounted for properly, and I did everything as fairly as possible. And in that fair, level playing ground kind of comparison, Hasselblad can't compete. Their lenses they're just not on that level. They're just really, really not on that level. And if you look at the new comparisons that Carl Taylor's done for Hasselblad, they've just made a complete mess of it. They said that they were going to do some comparisons after my videos went up. A year and a half later, they finally upload some videos, and dear God, they made a mess of it. Because let's look at some of the things that they've done. What they've done is they've compared it to the D850. Good thing there, well done. They compared it to the D850, but they've used a prime lens on their side, 28mm, which is a decent lens, versus a 1735 zoom lens on the Nikon side. And the zoom lens is like almost 20 years, more than 20 years old. Basically, this lens came out when I wasn't even in high school. That's how old that lens is. And again, it's a zoom lens. So imagine if I made a comparison where I compared a prime to a zoom. You guys would have a field day. Like, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? And the other thing is, he shot both of them at different focal lengths, so 19mm on full frame, 28mm on medium format. So you're going to have, remember, longer focal lengths have shallower depth of field at any given aperture, if you're shooting from the same distance, that is. And they were shooting from the same distance, but they were shooting at different focal lengths, but the same aperture, f16 on full frame, f16 on medium format. I mean, this is just absolute nonsense. You have to be kidding me if you think this is a fair comparison. Carl Taylor obviously understands how depth of field works, and I know that he does, because in a video straight after this video, he talks about how medium format produces shallower depth of field at any given aperture if you're trying to match the framing. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, on one side, they're talking about shallow depth of field for medium format, and on the other side, when they do the comparison, when it's appropriate, they'll completely disregard that information and basically compare full frame with the same aperture. Like, you can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. So they've done this comparison, and they've severely handicapped full frame in order to make their system look good. Because, like I said, when you do it on a fair and level playing field, Hasselblad lenses can't compete. Imagine if they compared it to an actual good prime lens, like something from Sigma, like a Sigma Art lens or a Zeiss prime lens, or some of the new prime lenses from Nikon or potentially Canon if they were going to use Canon or Sony. Then imagine what kind of difference you would get, and at an appropriate aperture. And they have to do this. They have to handicap full frame in order to make their system look good, because their system isn't that good. Their lenses aren't that good. Their build quality on their camera is horrendously bad. And in fact, I've got quite a nice anecdote which kind of summarizes how bad their build quality is. So when I first got the camera, I was like, wow, this is a Hasselblad, this is incredible. And I was showing it to my family and friends, and some of my family members, they picked up the camera, and they have no perspective on the photography industry. They don't know who Hasselblad is. So do you know what their first thought was when they picked up this £30,000 camera? They thought it was cheap. Can you believe that? They thought it was cheap. Because it creaks, it's made of plastic, it's got these, cheap buttons on top made of that, that remote control cheap rubber button. And I got offended by it. I was like, this is Hasselblad, like, how could you say that? And, but then eventually I realized that actually they're being objective. They don't know who Hasselblad is. They're not tainted by the brand. That's how cheaply built these cameras are. And it's ridiculous that they have to resort to these means or these methods. And it just shows a severe lack in confidence in their own system. Because if you were confident, if you knew that your system was the best, then guess what? You would always actively try and put them on a level plane. In fact, you would try and put full frame at an advantage just so that you can demonstrate that your camera is so good that even at an advantage, our cameras are better. That's what you do. But if you're not confident in your system, you have to resort to these means. That's just what it is. And, these are my opinions, but my opinions, like I said, They're backed up by demonstrations, and I can back all of these thoughts up. You can disagree, that's fine. But still, you know, the fact that Hasselblad are doing this, in my mind, I'd call this misleading. I'd say they're misleading people. You know, it is akin to mis-selling. In my mind, I think this is akin to mis-selling, and it's deplorable behavior. Hasselblad really need to shape up. And, you know, the bullying, just because I made a review which was negative to you, I mean, dear God. I mean, talk about taking things personal. Like, seriously, what are you doing?